Alright, next we'll go with the different kinds of price elasticity of demand. This is a very simple topic. I'll explain it in a way that you will all will also understand and very easily scoreable also. Price elasticity of demand, also known as PED. Price elasticity of demand measures the responsiveness, this is the keyword, responsiveness of the quantity demanded of a good to change in its price. This is a very basic simple definition which you'll have to not memorize but understand, because I have understood this in a very simple way. I can show you in a graph, you will understand it much better in a graph. So we have here, we have y-axis and we have x-axis. This is the quantity demanded, so I'm writing QD or DQ. Sorry, we have to write quantity demanded only, and this is the price here. So let us say we have a price 2. At price 2, which was high, the quantity demanded was Q2. Okay, quantity demanded was, so this is quantity. Okay, and this is price. So at price level 2, the quantity demanded was Q2, but at price 1, when the price fell down, the quantity demanded may be for like more. So say quantity demanded is this much. Okay, so for price 1, the quantity demanded is more. As the price falls, the quantity demanded goes up. Now coming back, this was the law of demand, where it says that other things remaining constant, as the price increases from P1 to P2, the quantity demanded decreases from Q1 to Q2. I'll repeat again. As the price increases from P1 to P2, the quantity demanded, earlier when it was P1, the quantity was Q1. So the quantity demanded of a good or service decreases from Q1 to Q2. So this way we can expand our answers also for law of demand. But now we are not learning law of demand, we are learning about price elasticity of demand. So here what happens is, I'll have to also draw another graph, but you can see that the change in price is very less, okay, from P1 to P2, but the quantity demanded has decreased quite substantially, a wider range compared to the price change. So this shows that there is this is elastic, that is, it moves a lot. Now let me draw another graph, same thing. So P2 and P1. Okay, now the price has moved a lot. In this, price had moved very less. So at P1, the quantity demanded was this much. Let us assume this much. Okay, quantity demanded was this much. And at price 2, when the price moved a lot, the quantity demanded did not change, dropped little bit, but not much. So here what has happened is, although the price has moved much, but the quantity demanded has not moved. So it is inelastic. The quantity demanded is inelastic because the movement of quantity has not changed much compared to the price. So this is more inelastic. The second graph. The first graph is more elastic, and this is inelastic as far as the price has changed. So this understanding this graph is very important. We can draw it in the this is the demand curve. I'm just writing in short, demand curve. You have to touch these 2 points, demand curve, like this. We have to touch these points, and we use a scale and everything. I am not able to use a scale here because I have a mouse. I'm working with mouse, so excuse me for that. Alright, so the formula for calculating the price elasticity of demand is very simple. PED is equal to percentage change in quantity demanded upon percentage change in price. Okay, this is a very simple formula. Now, let's say the quantity demanded, you can see that it's a big gap. So let's say the percentage change here is say 50, say 25%. Okay, 25% change in quantity demanded. From Q1 it has dropped to Q2, means 25% change has happened. But the price has changed by only 5%. Okay, so the net result is 5. So it says here that if the PED is greater if PED is greater than 1, it means it has elastic demand. The goods and service has elastic demand. That is, it moves a lot. It is elastic. Okay, and the second scenario, if the as the price changes, the quantity does not change much, then it is inelastic. So how do we with the formula I'll explain. So if let's say the quantity has changed to uh, 20 is changed by 20%. The quantity has changed by 20%, but sorry, quantity has changed less, right? So we have quantity changed, we have percentage in quantity demanded upon percentage change in its price. Okay, so here we know that the price has changed much. So let's say price has changed by 10%. Let's take 10%. The price has changed 10%, but the quantity changed is less, let's say 5%. Okay, the quantity demanded has changed only 5%, but the price has changed 10%. So which means it is half, which means it is 0.5. So we know that if it is less than 1, if the price elasticity of demand is less than 1, here is less than 1, then it is known as inelastic demand. And if it is greater than 1, it is known as elastic demand. Okay, it's very simple by way of graph. We'll understand this. For this, the graph will be like this. Again, I'll redraw this. Here it is elastic. So the price, we can show it like this. And as the price increases, the demand has changed very much. So this is P2. So this is Q2. This is quantity demanded. This is P1. The demand was very high at that time. Okay, demand was very high. When the price was low, demand was very high. The quantity demanded was very high. But as the price increased, the quantity demanded fell a lot from where it was in Q1. So this is elastic. It has moved a lot. Okay, and therefore we can even draw a little bit like this. Little less we can draw like this, so that we can see the difference between P1 and P2 is very less, and Q1 and Q2 is a lot. So therefore we'll have PED will be greater than 1. So let us say this percentage change is say 25. Okay, 25% change has happened in quantity. It has fell down by 25%, and the price has increased by 5%. So therefore PED is greater than 1. As we know that the formula is percentage change in quantity demanded upon percentage change in price. Okay, this is the formula for PED, and in this formula it will be 25 upon 5, which is equal to 5. So PED is greater than 1, means PED is equal to 5, which means it is greater than 1. So it has elastic demand. Okay, for inelastic demand, again we can draw the graph. Demand is inelastic. Okay, so but the price will move a lot. So we have to draw like this, because the demand we have to keep it less. So let us say this was P1, 1, this is P2. Okay, so when it was P2, the quantity demanded was Q2. When the price was 1 at this position, the quantity demanded was at this position. The quantity is not changing. Yeah, although the price is going up, but the quantity is not changing. That is, it is inelastic. Now, let us say this quantity has changed by 5, but the price has changed by 25 or 20%. Let's say 20%. Okay, let's say 20%. So again, we have the formula, percentage change in quantity demanded upon percentage change in its price. Now we know percentage change in price is 20 in the graph, and percentage change in quantity demanded is 5, which is equal to 1/4, which is equal to 0.25. When you divide 1 upon 4, it's 0.25. Now this is less than 1. If this is less than 1, which is PED is less than 1, but it is greater than 0, so it is known as inelastic demand. Excuse me. Alright, so we covered elastic demand and inelastic demand. Okay, now we'll cover up the perfectly elastic demand later on. First we start with elastic and inelastic demand. Okay, let me just erase this quickly. I'll get a breather time also. So we have perfectly elastic demand and perfectly inelastic demand also. So earlier we studied elastic and inelastic demand. Now we'll study about perfectly elastic and perfectly inelastic demand. So what happens in perfectly elastic demand is PED PED, that is price elasticity of demand, goes to infinity. This is a symbol of infinity, and the graph for this is very simple. Okay, that is, there will be two graphs. Okay, one is, let's say this is P1 and P2. So at price 1, the quantity demanded was this much, for example. Quantity demanded was this much. But at price 2, the quantity demanded falls to straight away 0. Straight away 0 it falls to. Okay. This is known as infinity. It moves to its extreme. Even a small change in price will lead the quantity demanded to fall to 0. So for example, consumers will only buy at one specific price, that is at P1, and any deviation, any movement from that price will cause the demand to fall to 0 straight away. Okay, and here a horizontal demand curve parallel to x-axis. Horizontal demand curve parallel to x-axis, that is this one. There is no second curve for the P2, although I have shown one line just to make you understand that it falls to 0. Okay, or we can even show like this also, just P1 and P2, that's it. And just we write Q2 here because the quantity demanded has fallen to 0, and we have to write y-axis, x-axis, then we have to write here quantity demanded, we have to write price here on the vertical y-axis, and the horizontal x-axis we have to write quantity demanded. Okay, and this itself will be the demand curve, that is from here to here, that is it has straight away fallen down here. Okay, this is price elasticity of demand for infinity. In alternate scenario, this basically works with perfectly competitive markets like agricultural products under certain conditions. This has a horizontal demand curve parallel to the x-axis. So that is why you can't show the demand curve here, because it is parallel to the x-axis. That is this curve. This itself is the demand curve. We can write here. This itself is the demand curve. So a situation where quantity demanded changes infinitely with a small change in price. Now, the another scenario is where price is inelastic. That is, price does not move at all. Sorry, the demand does not move even though the price moves. Here what has happened is when the price moved little bit, the demand fell to zero. In this case, what has happened is the graph will be like this. So the price has moved from P1 to P2, right? At P1 the demand was this much. At P2 the demand will not move at all. Okay, the demand will still remain at the same point. Okay, and in this the demand curve is a vertical curve. This one, this is the demand curve. It's a vertical line, vertical demand curve parallel to y-axis. And in when PED was infinity, it was a horizontal curve parallel to x-axis. This is parallel to y-axis. This is your y-axis, this is your x-axis. This is your quantity demanded. You have to write here quantity demanded. Here you have to write the price. So as the price increased from P1 to P2, the quantity did not change. At P1 the quantity was Q1, and at P2 also the quantity was here only, at Q2 only. The second quantity means the quantity did not change at all. So a situation where the quantity demanded does not change at all regardless of the price change here. No matter how much the price changes, whether it falls to P0 also, here also the quantity demanded will not change. Consumers will continue to demand the same quantity of the good. Neither it will increase nor it will decrease in this kind of situation. We have an example here. Life-saving drugs such as insulin for diabetic patients, where the quantity demanded remains the same even if the price rises. It's not that if the price goes down, people will inject themselves with more insulin just because they are diabetic patient. You understand? It becomes senseless. So this is, or people will start taking more medicines just because it has become cheaper. No, it doesn't work like that. So in these kind of situations, the demand does not change whether the price goes up or down. Okay, so we now covered both the perfectly elastic to infinity, PED is equal to infinity, and perfectly inelastic, PED is equal to 0. Then we covered elastic demand, which is PED is greater than 1, and inelastic demand, which is PED is less than 1. PED is less than 1. Okay, now we'll learn about the elastic demand. I've drawn the graph, I explained it. Now we'll go through the definition. This is a situation where the quantity demanded changes by a larger percentage than the percentage change in its price. If PD is greater than 1, a small change in price, we can see there is a small change in price leads to a relatively larger change in the quantity demanded. You can see that. Either increase or decrease, doesn't matter. Consumers are highly responsive to the price change here. But it does not go to infinity like perfectly elastic demand. If a relatively flatter demand curve, this is relatively flatter demand curve. Okay, no essential goods or luxuries, non-essential goods or luxuries, where consumers are more sensitive to price changes. For example, the demand for electronics or branded clothing may be elastic. In elastic demand, this is a situation where the quantity demanded changes by a smaller percentage than the percentage change in the price. You can see this here. If PED is less than 1, in this case, a change in price leads to a smaller change in the quantity demanded. Consumers are less responsive to price change. Means they are not bothered about the price change. It has a relatively steeper demand curve. You can see this. It has a relatively steeper demand curve. So this is, and we'll not cover relatively elastic and relatively inelastic. we'll go with unitary elastic demand, PED. This is also very simple. It states that if the price goes from P1 to P2, this is Q1, the price moves to Q2. As the price goes up, the quantity demanded also goes up by the same proportion. So let us say if the quantity has changed by 5%, the price has also changed by 5%. So of course the PED will be 5 upon 5, which is equal to 1. So this is known as unitary elastic demand. Means both the percentage change in quantity demanded is exactly equal to the percentage change in the price. For example, for every 1% change in price, 5% change in price in this example, there is an equal 5% change in the quantity demanded. In this case, the total expenditure or total revenue remains constant when the price changes. Whether it's an expenditure or whether it's a revenue, it remains the same. The demand curve is a rectangular hyperbola. In this case, what they mean is this way. If we go by pure law of demand, then the graph will be like this. It will be perfect. All the squares will be perfect. All three squares will be perfect to each other. There will be no variation between them. There's an exact gap. All three are of equal size. Alright, so we have done this also. Let me check if we can go through the relative elastic demand and relatively inelastic demand. The relatively elastic demand is very similar to the elastic demand, except that in this type of elasticity, the demand for good is more responsive to price changes, but not perfectly elastic. So the quantity demanded is relatively more responsive to changes in price, but not to the extreme extent seen in the perfectly elastic demand. So it does change, but not to the perfectly elastic demand. So it is like this. If you still want to draw this also, then this also is very simple. P1 and P2. Okay. So if at P1 the quantity demanded was Q1, okay, at P2 it will not go to the extreme, nor will it be like in elastic demand, but it will be somewhere around, say, this much. It will move, but it will be between the elastic demand and perfectly elastic demand. So it will be like this. So if you still want to make it, you can make this diagram also for relatively elastic demand and relatively inelastic demand. So in relatively inelastic demand, what happens is, in this, the demand for good is less responsive to the price change. But the main important point here is the quantity demanded does not change much with price increase or decrease. This is typical for goods that have fewer substitutes or are considered necessities. So the key point here is the quantity demanded does not change. The quantity demanded does not change much with price increase or decrease. So this is similar to your inelastic demand. Okay, so what we'll do is we'll avoid the relatively elastic and relatively inelastic demand. It's very similar to that only. Okay, next let's move on to the factors affecting price elasticity of demand. What are the factors which affect the price elasticity of demand? So here I have created a acronym for that, TIPS, TIPS. Okay, so we have taste and preferences, income of the consumer, the number of consumers in the market, that is we can say N also, tins also, the number of consumers in the market, and S is the substitute products, tins, TINS. We have tin ka dabba, so it's called tins. Okay, so taste and preference, income of the consumer, number of consumers in the market, and substitute products. Okay, which can be substituted one product with the another product. So that will all affect the price elasticity of the demand. Now let us understand that the price elasticity of demand, sorry, this is about the income, this is about the number of consumers, and this is about the substitute products. Now, how we are not talking about the determinants of demand here. So just ignore this for time being, but you can use this acronym for the determinants of demand, or factors affecting demand, not the price elasticity. Here we are specifically focusing on the price elasticity of demand. So let's go through this. In the price elasticity of demand, substitute one was there. Substitute is there. The taste and preferences, you can substitute this with T. This is with S. This is with income. So it's almost covering all of them that I have shown here. And the number of consumers would be say brand loyalty would be number of consumers more coming in. So it's almost like that only. So N. Okay, tins. So we can use this also in this. So let's go through that. Availability of substitutes. Okay. The more substitute available for a good, the more elastic the demand is. For instance, if the price of one brand of cola increases, or one brand of soft drink increases, that is, the price of one brand of soft drink increases, consumers can easily switch to another brand of cold drink. So substitute affects the price elasticity of the price will move more if there are more substitutes available. The price will move more if the consumer's taste and preferences have changed for better, that is, then the demand will be more. If more consumers prefer or taste and their preferences move towards one product, the demand for that product will increase, and the price elasticity of demand curve will move. So let's go to the necessity versus luxury. Necessities tend to have inelastic demand, as people will buy them regardless of price changes. So this will also be covered under T only, taste and preferences. For example, luxuries, high-end cars, designer clothes typically have elastic demand, and foods and medicine, they have inelastic demand. The demand does not change even if the price changes for necessity items. So over the long term time period, the demand becomes more elastic, whereas in the short term the demand is inelastic. The demand does not change in short term, but over a long term period the demand curve will change. Proportion of income spent. Goods that require a large portion of the consumer's income tend to have more elastic demand, as price changes have a greater impact on their purchasing decisions. And brand loyalty. Strong brand loyalty can make demand less elastic. Okay, so people will buy it regardless of the price change. So the demand is less elastic. Consumers who are loyal to a particular brand are less likely to change their purchasing habits in response to price increases.